All right, principal, 25 years. Excellent. Buford, 25 years, instructional coach. 15 years, 27 years, 28 years. Oh my goodness, y'all probably could be leading this. 23 years, 21 years. Popping up so quickly. I love this. 3 years, 7 years, 12 years. Such a very first year teacher. Thank you, Tia, for being here. So one thing that we have been so excited about for these webinars this summer, you're welcome, Tia, is the fact that we get to reach such a wide, varied audience. We have teachers from first year to 30 plus years here learning together today, because this is new for all of us. We also know that our state is at a time where we've got lots of teachers who are brand new to our profession. Maybe they're career changers, maybe they've come through an alternative certification process, and we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for all teachers and all students to learn and to really collaborate together. And so that's one reason we've been so excited about these webinars and for the response we got for signing up for these. So we appreciate that you are here, that you are giving up some of your summer, and that you're willing to share your experiences and the time that you've been in education. We appreciate you. So we also want to let you know who we are. So the folks that we have with us today, again, I'm Brenna McCormick, the Secondary Education Associate. We also have Tabitha Hughes, who is our middle level associate, and Mandy Hawker, who is our elementary associate. So we are your people for secondary, middle, and elementary, and we are excited to be able to present this information to you. We all work in the, thank you, Floyd. We all work in the Office of Assessment and Standards. And so that includes ELA standards and development, the assessment side of things. Our work with you today focuses on the review process that we went through for the new 2023 standards, the implementation process, and how the standards will impact classroom instruction and assessment. We have, you know, that we've recently reviewed and updated these standards. We currently, our sole role is to support educators, schools, and districts as we transition to using those standards. So we have some great resources for you today that we hope that you will appreciate and use as we make that transition. We're also partners with you all in our work is informed and adjusted based on the feedback that we receive from you. All the educators in South Carolina, when you give us feedback, when you reach out with questions, we are then able to plan and develop professional learning and resources that support and supplement both the standards, but also just unique individual needs of teachers across the state. So please continue to give us feedback, ask us questions, ask for our help, because that helps us tailor the work that we do to best meet your needs. We also provide support through instructional resources and professional development opportunities. Right now, our world really is the 2023 standards. So that is what we are offering the most of. But we really want to focus on instructional practices that teachers can take back to their classrooms to effectively implement our new standards. So my purpose today is threefold. I do want to provide an overview of the 2023 standards document and support documents, provide information and resources that will help equip you to understand and implement these standards. And then we've also developed a tool that will provide a manageable plan for exploring these standards, whether it's on your own, with a small group, or if you are an administrator or district level administrator who is planning PD for this upcoming year and you need a guideline, I think we've got one for you. So I want you to think for a moment about your purpose. And this is an opportunity to jot down on your note catcher. What do you hope to gain from our time together? And who are you going to share this learning with? What impact do you hope it will have? And before I give you a few minutes of silence to answer those questions, if you've been in a session with one of us recently about the standards, some of the information today may be repeat information. So I want you to consider a fresh lens. If you've heard this information before or seen it before, what lens can you now look through? If your job is admin, I want you to think today through the lens of a teacher. If your job is a teacher, think through the lens of instructional coaches. Shift your lens and your thinking to see if you can get another viewpoint from today, and hopefully that will freshen up the information for you. So I'm going to pause for a minute, give you 1 minute to jot down some thinking, and then I'm going to ask for 3 responses. All right, I would love for 3 people to unmute, 3 brave souls to unmute and let me know, what do you hope to gain? Who are you going to share your learning with? You answer just one of these questions for us.
So Brenna, this is Dawn Mitchell from District 6 in Spartanburg County, and I hope to be able to gain some resources and strategies for unpacking the new standards, aligning them with our current 2015 standards so that our teachers will be equipped to understand them and to begin implementing them starting next year.
Yes, thank you, Dawn.
Hey, Brenna, this is Sandra Roberts. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, this is, I'm kind of like Dawn. I've been working through the standard support documents. They're wonderful, and thank you again. And I've gone through and connected the old standards with the new standards using the crosswalk for kindergarten to 3rd grade. And so I'm taking a different lens now, thinking it's a good idea about how does this impact classroom instruction? If I'm a teacher and this is what I want to do, and maybe start working on some of this in the next year, what do I need to change? What shifts do I see? Do I need new materials? You know, how does this impact my planning for my classroom?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Hi.
Brenna.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm Amy Edwards. I'm from Beaufort. And I'm a social studies teacher.
Thank you for being here.
And so I want to make sure that I am well enough versed in the informational text portion of the standards so that I can do my part to make sure that my students are prepared, especially in that area. I know it's so hard to cover all aspects of ELA in just a single class. So if the social studies teachers can take on some of that burden in the informational text reading and writing. And so that's my goal. And so I'm going to be sharing my learning with my students, whether they want it or not. And I'm also the social studies department chair. So I'll be sharing this with the other social studies teachers in my school.
Amy, thank you. And I joke with my team all the time. I'm a super emotional person. And when you said that you're a social studies teacher, literally I'm tearing up. I just appreciate that partnership so much, and just that willingness to come and to learn and to be a partner with us over in ELA. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for my daily cry. I always have to get one in. So thank you for that. And Crystal, yes, I think you had something too.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of piggyback on what everybody said. My name is Crystal Haney. I'm a reading coach at Joseph Keels Elementary in Richland too. And I think the biggest thing, I'm actually working on the support documents for HMH into reading and kind of looking at the changes and how we have to kind of have like a mindset shift as a coach and a teacher, and really looking at the things that we have to now cover, and also things that we are not going to have to cover in the future. So to kind of see the differences and the different language in the standards and the overarching expectations as well was something that I really was just, blown away by. And I like how the standards are more broad, so you can cover more things. And I just like the shift of it.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
just showing teachers that shift too.
Absolutely. And each of the three sessions that we'll have through this series does focus on a different thing. And so today you'll get a good overview as well as a resource to tackle the standards within however you want to do that within your team or your school or your district. And then as we move forward into the standards, we'll be taking some deeper dives into those shifts. And so we're excited that you're here with us on the journey. And I did want to mention one comment I saw in the chat from Phyllis, who specifically mentioned resources for parents. And that's actually something we are going to touch on a little bit today, because we want to think beyond just teachers and students when it comes to some of these support documents that we've developed and how we might use those to support all stakeholders in our communities. So I'm really excited to see all of these ambitions today, and I think we're going to meet some of that. Okay, so here's our agenda. We're going to start with the overview of the standards and support documents. We'll take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're going to explore the resource that we have developed to help you really understand and dig into the standards in a way that seems manageable. Again, looking through the lens of all of our teachers, whether they're first-year teachers or new, subject changers, or they're social studies teachers who this isn't their this isn't what they're doing day in and day out. How can we support everyone in their process of really unpacking these new standards? And then we'll have some clarity and closure. We're going to start with a quick self-assessment. So in the chat, you are going to put either a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. All right. So I have studied the standards and I have a working understanding or knowledge. I have seen or read the standards. I know that they exist. We have new ELA standards. Where are you on our list? Awesome. I see such a variety of 2s, 3s, and 4s. Obviously, there's no 1s. If you wouldn't have signed up if you didn't know they existed. Little humor this morning. But this is just a quick check, and obviously this is a teacher behavior that you could use within your classroom to just get a quick pulse of where everyone is. And yes, thank you, Krista. We've got some standards committee members in here who probably could lead this session just as well as any of us. So thank you all for your willingness to share where you are. We've got a range, a pretty even range from 2 to 4. So hopefully you will move up at least a step. And if you were already at a 4, then you can start thinking through implementation. How are you going to help other people? Who are you going to share this with? So before we get started, we always like to just make sure, no assumptions, that you know how to find the standards. So when you go to the State Department website, you'll click first the district and schools icon at the top. Then you'll click standards. And then under the English language arts feature box, you will click standards again. And then you'll go to our 2023 standards document. And if you have not been on the website recently, you go today, you may notice that there's been a little change. It used to be that 2023 was at the top of the page. We've shifted those so that the 2015 resources are now at the top and 2023 are at the bottom. And we did that because we didn't want there to be any confusion about whether this year was a transition year or the implementation year. So we wanted to keep those 2015 resources at the top. So it's the first thing you see, just as a reminder that we still have one assessed year with the 2015 standards. Again, thinking through the lens of supporting teachers who are new, these slides, feel free to steal them and pass them on. Hey, if you don't know how to find the standards, that's okay. Here's a step-by-step. Also a great resource for parents. So the timeline for this rollout process, January 2023 was the final approval for our new standards. We're in the process now of preparing for standards introduction and transition. Again, 23-24, this school year will be the last year that 2015 standards are assessed. And then in 24-25, the new standards will be fully operational and assessed. We wanted to take just a little bit of time and really give you some background information about standards and why we even have them, right? So this is part of the Education Accountability Act for us to have standards. And standards also are required for us to develop statewide assessments. They're intended to inform instruction and assessment, and they're often tied to funding and other resources. Standards are not a curriculum, they're not a course of study, but they do ensure that all students are receiving a high quality education and that educators and schools are equipped and prepared for developmentally appropriate learning. So it's a set of clear expectations for what students should know and be able to do. They are, again, mandated by law. And we have a 7-year cycle for revision. So the standards that have just been approved will be in effect for 7 years before we revise them again. Dr. Platt asked, will this affect the English 2 EOC for this coming school year? The answer is no. That will still be fully 2015, but the following year, yes. So in general, what's the purpose of our standards? We know that they should define what students should know and be able to do to be college and career ready by graduation. They should be clear, jargon-free, appropriate for the particular grade level, and comprehensible to all stakeholders. They're rigorous, they're specific, they balance content knowledge with skills. They're aligned from grade level to grade level, and we will look at some of the vertical articulations today that show that alignment. They serve as the basis for educational policy development, the development of curriculum, our assessments, and they should be manageable in the form of indicators in both number and scope for teaching and student mastery within an academic year. So when the standards were revised, there were several key features or key points that the revision committee needed to consider. And that was rigor, organization, measurability, manageability, skills progression, and comprehensiveness. So we just want to let you know that that's the lens that the committee looked through when they were revising these standards. All right, digging in, our standards shifted from 6 strands to 4. We now have the foundations of literacy, the applications of reading, research, and communications. Those are our 4 strands. Our coding has remained generally the same. If you didn't know, this is also something that is mandated, how the standards are coded. So if you've ever wondered why it seems a little convoluted, it's because this is how it has to be. So we have our codes start with the subject code, which is ELA. Then we have grade level. So this example here is 6th grade. You have your strand. This example is applications of reading. You have the standard, and then you have the indicator. So if you saw this code, you would know this is a 6th grade standard within applications of reading, and it's standard 2.1. And you'll also notice if you look at other content areas that this same predictable coding pattern is used. There are 7 key features within the standards document. Those are that it is color coded. There is a map for you. There are grade level entrance statements, standards and indicators, indicator insights, overarching expectations, and appendices. And I think all of these are really helpful features of the document to make them comprehensible. We're going to start with color coding. For ease of visibility, each strand is color coded. So your foundations of literacy is purple, applications of reading is green, research is blue, and written and oral communications is red. So at any point you see those colors, you know what they correlate to. And I see some comments of people appreciating color coding and the indicator insights, and I would definitely agree. So this is our key feature number 2, the standards map. You'll notice that it has our strands located on the left-hand side, foundations of literacy, applications of research, reading, research, and written and oral communication, followed by the standards, the indicator, the grade in which they impact, and then the coding. You'll notice specifically in foundations of literacy, there's a shift to systematic explicit reading instruction. And that our foundations standards are primarily for kindergarten through 2nd grade, but there are 2 indicators that do stretch into 3rd through 5th grade, and that's in fluency and word solving. Each of, if we take a closer look at each of the pieces of the map, foundations of literacy has 23 indicators within 4 standards. Application of reading has 14 indicators within 10 standards. We've got 1 standard in research, and that's broken into 5 indicators. And then our written and oral communication has 9 standards and 9 indicators. We have added into the document for 2023 grade level entering statements. The example that you see here is a 6th grade example. Each one includes a quote at the top, and then it includes a narration of what really is to be expected within that grade level. So it gives an overview of indicator expectations. It also gives some examples for the type of text that should be read, or the type of text students should be writing. We then have our standards and our indicators. So our applications of reading is at the top. That's the strand. You'll notice the color coding there with that bar of green. And then the standards are those that are bold on the left-hand side. And then you have your indicators that are beneath the standards. Then we have our next feature, which are indicator insights. And these were intended to provide understanding to the language of the indicators for the classroom teacher. The language included in the insights build from indicator to indicator. So it can refer back to previous grades, like don't forget this began in 4th grade, or it can go into the future and say, you know, this term is going to turn into this term in English 3. It's a great place to start when you're considering your classroom instruction, differentiation for students, and it really offers assistance in understanding the indicator itself. So let me show you an example. We have two boxes here with indicator insights. You have for ELA 6 AOR 1.1, you'll notice that it mentions descriptive details in the indicator. Well, what does descriptive details actually mean? I could have a different interpretation of that than someone else. So our indicator insight says, when we say descriptive details here, we're referring to sensory details, the way something looks, smells, tastes, sounds, and or feels. This gives you insight into then how to plan your instruction. We're focused in on just the sensory details. Also notice AOR 1.2. This is a 6th grade indicator, but it tells us here in the insights in grade 5, students analyzed how figurative language impact meaning, but grade 6 is adding mood and tone. So it gives you an idea of where we were, where we're going. Down here is one, again, that tells us what's going to happen in the future. Grade 6, we're looking at perspective, but eventually that's going to morph really into irony when you get to English 1. So it just gives you a long-term view of, how can I begin to develop some of that language, some of that thinking with students here, so that when they get to English 1, they are not hearing things for the first time, they've been exposed to it, they have a better understanding of how those connections are made from grade level to grade level. Now we also have key feature number 6, which is overarching expectations. And these are the fundamental skills and processes that are interwoven into the fabric of ELA across all grade levels. Yesterday, I was doing PD with Charleston and Sarah Hall. I told her I was going to steal this phrase, but she said the overarching expectations are how we do business in ELA. And I loved that, the way that she phrased that. This is just how we do business. They're not a strand or separate indicators, because you can't do any of our strands and indicators without doing these 6 things. You can't do it. So our overarching expectations include reading and writing for a variety of purposes, acquiring, refining, and sharing knowledge through multimedia literacies, making inferences, collaboration, citing evidence, and creating quality work. You can't do any of the other standards and indicators that we have if these 6 are not foundational expectations. So we hope that you'll kind of view them as the place to start. Everything we do should include these. We also have included with the overarching expectations of progression, some suggestions for how this might look across grade levels. This particular example is the collaboration overarching expectation, OE4. And you'll see that grades K through 2, we've given a description of what this could look like. Again, this isn't exhaustive list by any means, but we wanted to give you a little bit of a framework, a little bit of a reference to what that could look like. It goes into grades 3, 5, and then also grades 6 through English 4. So you get an idea of how students should be progressing within each overarching expectation. And then we have 3 appendices. We have Appendix A, which is our Foundations of Literacy Standards written in the grade band articulations. We have Appendix B, which is the vertical progression of spiraled standards. And then we have Appendix C, which is our acknowledgements. If you looked at the standards document during the review process, you probably noticed that there were many more appendices. It was like through letter M, I think it was. And we wanted to just make sure you guys realized that those appendices did not go away. We just reclassified them as support documents so that we have a little more autonomy in the revisions we can make in them, the edits that we can make, we can add to them, we can remove things. As you guys give us feedback and you notice that, hey, we love the rhetoric support document, but we wish you had included XYZ, because they are not part of the actual standards document, we can go in and just make those revisions. We can add to them. If they were part of the standards document, we'd have to go through the whole board review process to make any changes. And we wanted to make sure that we could be as responsive to your needs as possible when it came to those documents. And that's why we pulled them out and published them separately. So those are now the support documents that are on our instructional resources page. So the grade band articulation for Foundations of Literacy, this is an example. You'll see that this is ELA Foundations of Literacy Standard 1, and it just shows how it progresses from kindergarten to second grade. So just another viewpoint that you can use when you are planning and looking at how student expectations progress from one grade level to another. You have the vertical progression of standards, which is again a progression that starts at the top with English 4. And I think somebody asked this in the chat earlier, what do the E's mean? And if you've never been in the high school realm, you might not know. So E4 refers to English 4, English 3, English 2, and then English 1. And then it goes to 8th grade all the way down to K, which is kindergarten. So you start at the top with the final expectation. When they leave English 4, students should be able to do this, and it goes down to kindergarten. And it's a great, great view of how expectations of rigor and complexity change in the standards. If you're looking for a document to identify shifts that are happening, or maybe something that you taught in English 3 but it's not there anymore, well, it could be because we moved it back to 6th grade where it was developmentally appropriate to teach. So this is a great view to look at when you're trying to identify shifts and notice how rigor or complexity increases or decreases through the grade levels. So I have a pop-up teacher tip, and I have a question for you first. How would you feel if you were given a speeding ticket on a stretch of road that had no speed limit signs posted? Just think.
Low battery, please charge.
Think about that for just a moment. How would you feel? No speed limit signs, you were being reasonable, going 50, and then you got a ticket. Not so good, right? We would want to combat that, like, hey, you didn't tell me what my expectation was, so you can't punish me for not knowing the expectation, right? Similarly, would it be fair to evaluate students without first telling them what they are expected to know and do? So I want you to think for a moment about your classroom assessments. They should directly align with grade level indicators. And documents like the vertical articulation is something that can help us with that alignment, but also with making sure students know what clear expectations have been set for them. So I want you to just reflect for a moment and put this in your note catcher. Why does this matter? How can the vertical articulation document help you with alignment? And then I'm going to ask for 2 people to share. All right, let's hear some thinking.
Brenna, I was thinking about this in the way, as far as vertical articulation goes. One of the things that we see very often at the middle school level is that when students come in to us at the beginning of the school year, for example, and we want to restart teaching that concept from the very, very, very beginning, rather than looking at what they should have learned last year and what they need to know next year. So we end up starting all the way back for example, with plot and setting and characterization and direct characterization and all of those pieces. And we end up not finishing at the level we need to be to push those students to the next level. So the vertical articulation helps us figure out where they should be. And if we have to do reteaching, it's not reteaching back from the first grade standard to the sixth. It's just stepping back a little bit, looping around to those pieces, reviving that prior learning, and being able to move them forward. Without the vertical articulation document, we're starting from scratch every single year.
Tracy, I love and appreciate that you said that. And someone recently, and I probably am not saying this correctly, but someone recently told me that when it comes to the grade level indicators for your grade band, you have to assume comprehension of all the other ones and refer to the actual interpretation and implementation of that indicator for your grade level. Because you're right, we'll never get finished. And each time a teacher starts over, we're lengthening that gap. Right.
Right. You won't reach the level of complexity. Right.
Absolutely.
I fully agree. We were just talking about this the other day. That's where students start getting A's on assessments that are really grading on information that were on lower grade level standards.
Mhm.
And so their grades do not match on grade level standards. And so they're not able to function on grade level, and their grades don't match what they will be tested on. It's their grade level.
Lynn, that is exactly right. And we actually talked about this a little bit with Charleston yesterday, and we were using figurative language, I think, is the example, and how we, kids can get up to English 4, and we're still asking them to tell us what the definition of a metaphor is, right? We've moved on past the definition of metaphor. And so I think that one concern was, well, what do we do if there are students who genuinely don't know the definition of metaphor and can't identify one, let alone displaying the meaning of it? Well, it doesn't mean that we can't put in support in places that students need it. By English 1, 2, 3, 4, who cares what the definition of metaphor is? We want to know what your interpretation is. Could we provide students to figurative language? Here's the definitions. Now take your assessment by telling me what the author's intention was for using these. Could we use the scaffold all year long? You probably shouldn't. But in the beginning, at least, that's providing the support that those students need. A great conversation and a great thing to think about when you're doing some of this planning. Anybody else have a comment you'd like to share?
Brenna, just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, when I was in the classroom, I typically had like a Padlet or a Google slide that had all those terms, and they could revisit it as much as they wanted to. By the, second quarter, they usually didn't need to, but you're able to just post it. They know where it is. And if they're not sure, the definition of something, they can just go to that resource.
Absolutely. And I think another concern that is a valid concern is that, well, these are brand new indicators. And in some cases, there's going to be gaps because what's in the new indicators wasn't in the old indicators. How can we expect students to know things that they didn't get taught in the grades prior because the indicators didn't exist, right? And I think that's going to be some growing pains that we'll have to adapt to, and they're valid points. And I think that's another really important part of identifying the shifts, so we know where those gaps are and we can address them head on. But I do think that when you're looking at classroom assessments, you've got to keep the indicator expectation in mind. We've got to make sure that no rungs of the ladder are skipped, so that when students are in 6th grade, they are assessed to the expectation of the indicator, because that's what they're going to see on the SC Ready test. And if they're not exposed to that rigor in classroom assessments, they are not going to be prepared for SC Ready. So I love the conversation that you all are having and the thinking that you're doing. Now, you've done a little bit of this already, but we're going to take just another moment to pause and reflect with a strategy called New Now Next. Something else that you can use with your audience. What information did you learn about the standards document in the past 30 minutes or so? What does that information have you thinking about now? And what are your next steps? How are you going to apply this new learning? I'm going to give you about a minute to just think through that, and then we're going to do a little waterfall in the chat with your responses. So give you a minute. So I want you to choose your answer to just one of these questions. Copy it, get it ready, put it in the chat. And when I say go, you're going to press send, and everybody's going to waterfall in so we can see what everyone is thinking. So I'm going to let you get prepared. And I'm going to count us down from 3. 3, 2, 1. Oh, y'all were ready. Intentionality, I love it. Prepare to share. How to implement. Color coding, we learned about. Yes, indicator insights, the vertical articulation. What students should have learned in 5th grade. Next steps, working with your team. Focus more on assessment being aligned. That's so important. How do we use that vertical articulation doc with intention? Kelly mentioned our special ed teachers, and we do have a support document for that. We're going to look at that in a minute. The indicator insights, format of the standards. These are so great. Thank you for sharing. The best way to share for teachers. Unpacking across the grade levels. Love this. All right. So that was our step 1. Yes, hashtag student goals. Love it. That was step 1. And now we're going to go into the overview of the support documents. I have pulled maybe 5 or 6 of the support documents. We're not going to take a deep dive into all of them because we don't have time for that, but I pulled a couple that I think would be relevant across all the grade levels. And we're going to look at those and how they might be useful, how we might implement them when we're planning. And then we're going to make sure you know how to find the rest of the support documents in case you want to do a deeper dive on some of those yourself. So starting with our timeline, we were developing support documents starting in the fall, going through summer, and we actually had like an August deadline in mind, and we were told it's too late, you got to have them earlier. So we pushed through, we got them done, and we had them published June 1st for you all. And we were so excited to be able to do that. And then again, in August 24, notice that we keep reiterating this, that's when the new standards are fully implemented. But these support documents can definitely be used in this transition year as you're planning. So to find these support documents, you'll start the same. You go to the districts and schools icon on the State Department website. Again, you'll click standards. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Sarah. English box. And this time you're going to click instructional resources. And when you get to this page, you'll notice that the instructional resources aligned to the 2023 document are listed there in a 2-column table. Again, the 2015 information is at the top of the page and 2023 is at the bottom. So you'll have to scroll down to find those. And again, we're doing that to really try to prevent any confusion about which standards are being assessed this year. So what documents are available. We have Special Education Insights, Multilingual Learner Insights. Both of these groups I've seen mentioned in the chat today. Your Gifted and Talented Insights, an infographic that is just real great, just print out for, okay, I forgot what the coding is. I forgot what this section's about. Easy to read, how to navigate the document. We have our vertical articulation with indicator insights attached. We have a conventions matrix, a research support document, a text complexity document, a vocabulary support document, a rhetoric support document. We will have the Foundations of Literacy support document. It's the only one that's not ready and published, but it's coming. We have a beautiful glossary that was almost the end of all of us putting it together, but it's there. And then we have a crosswalk document. So there are so many resources available for you to use however you need to use them. So we're excited to offer them. We're going to start by looking at our special populations documents. We have absolutely, Deidre, that, you know, we're all using the same language. We're all on the same page. You know, we wanted every student and every teacher in every district to be able to see themselves somewhere in these documents. A starting point for you, no matter where you are on the scale, the spectrum of teaching. So here we have links to our special education document, our ML document, and our gifted and talented document. Awesome, JD. That's wonderful. With these documents, you can expect some information, some of the law behind each of those special population groups, and then some practical help. So I want you to take just 3 minutes and see if you can't look at the documents through a broad lens and then a narrow lens. What's the overall purpose of the document? And then how could these documents impact your practice? So we're going to take about 3 minutes to just get a quick overview, and then we'll respond to those questions. Thank you, Barb. So let's just do 2 people unmute if you'd like, and let me know what you're thinking.
Good morning.
Good morning, Carla.
So from my perspective, I believe that these support documents will give clarity for the expectations through the lens of these special populations, allowing educators to see how to best serve the needs of those students that are on the spectrum with special education, how to best approach our multiple English learn or our students that have diverse language needs, as well as reaching the depth and the breadth of really, really touching on those gifted and talented students so that all of them will be reachable and teachable.
Absolutely. I love that. And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but I'm going to say it. There's more to come here. We're working on some other special projects, maybe podcast, just to sit down with the people who wrote these documents and how they can practically be used in the classroom. So know that more support is coming, and we are in the process of just working on any innovative way we could think of to increase support in the field, but also for these students of special populations. So I love that feedback podcast. So I don't have a date for it, but we're working on it. And we hope to be able to continue releasing resources to support these students.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Massey. I just wanted to say that in all of the meetings about the value-added growth model, these resources are going to help so much because every child matters. Every single score matters for every child. Every child can be moved, and it's going to make a difference to everybody to have these.
Absolutely. We teach all students. And you're right, all students matter. And we really wanted to make sure that there was representation for all students. So thank you for that. All right, let's look at the grammar and conventions matrix. We have gotten some really happy feedback for this. You can expect a clear progressive tool to see the expectations for grammar and conventions for each grade level. You'll notice that there are, I'm going to put the link in the chat, and you'll notice that, wait, I think I put the wrong link. Hold on. Yes, I got ahead of myself. Here's the grammar and conventions matrix. You'll notice that there is an I on the chart. That means that is when that skill is introduced. So if you'll take just a moment to look through that grammar and conventions matrix support document, and then we'll talk about what you consider to be the purpose and how it's going to impact your practice. So I'll give you about 4 minutes. Yes, Amy. All right, let's have 2 people unmute and tell us what you're thinking. Yes, Sandra.
I'm Jennifer Tanner from Beaufort County. I just love this document because I always run into my 7th graders can't put periods, can't put punctuation marks, aren't using commas, whether they're typing or handwriting the document, no matter how many times you peer review with different groups and classmates and teachers, they're still not putting that punctuation in. And this document clearly proves that if it's in the instructions that you needed to do that, you knew how to do it. So this is just like a great way to like have that in your hand, be like, I don't need to teach this, you know it already. So I really like that.
Yes, I love that. And someone in Phyllis said also this is a great document for parents. And I think students and parents both can benefit from this. Like, hey, here are the expectations. Here's what we know this has been introduced to you. We're going to continue to build on that. But here's what I'm teaching brand new this year. And someone, I can't remember, I was suggested also that particularly in the lower grades, some work will get turned in that's a little too good for a first grader or a second grader. Maybe they've had some help, and that is a great way to let parents know, hey, these are the expectations. This is what's grade level appropriate for your student, and this is what our expectation is for their writing. And it's not that we can't push them ahead, but we want to make sure they have these great foundational skills in place that are appropriate for their age before we start moving forward. Anyone else have something they'd like to share before we move to the next one?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Sharonda Pilger here for Lawrence District 55. I was looking over those things. I see where some of the things that are required for introduction, that is a good idea to see. Far as what needs to be introduced, but I see that some of the standards that are there that are saying that we shouldn't have introduced yet, we are actually doing. So that's like, okay,
Yeah.
that gives me a broad spectrum on what I really need to focus on versus, okay, they might need to know this now, but now that gives me a clarity on when to really introduce or when it's required to introduce certain things.
Right. I think in some areas we are expecting more than what is age, appropriate. So again, and I saw the comment too of like, hey, well, they're still going to get to high school and not know some of this. And you're exactly right. So this is another opportunity where we're going to have to figure out ways to build in support to assist those students who don't have these skills, particularly in the couple of gap years that it's going to take for students to have gotten the 2023 standards. Go ahead, Dawn.
One of the things when I shared this with our elementary and middle school coaches is we really appreciated the conciseness of this document with the grammar and conventions matrix compared to the 2015 one. When we aligned the 2015 language and convention grammar standards to a common assessment with a writing rubric, there were a lot of very obscure grammar standards that made it very difficult to assess in a timely manner, whereas this updated document is concise, it is clear. We are in the process of updating our 3rd through 5th grade, our K through 2, and then our 6th through 8th grade writing rubric, and feel 3 things. It's much more developmentally appropriate. That makes it more teacher friendly because of its conciseness. And I think we're going to be able to more intentionally align it to our instruction and assessment because of those 2 components of it. So we appreciate the standards committee work on that and your guidance in creating that document. We feel like it's going to be a stronger tool for us because of that.
Thank you, Dawn. And that's a great idea to think about the rubrics that you already have in place and how you can adjust them to better align with these new expectations. Yeah, Carla, there is huge responsibility on the shoulders of the lower grade levels. But I think you're right that in the long term, we're going to see development, we're going to see growth. So I think that for a couple of years, we're going to have some faith that everyone is implementing these and doing it well in each grade level. Each grade level is taking care of its job. And eventually, I think we're going to see some huge changes within our state. So let's look at the research support document. I'm going to put this in the chat. And in the research support document, you're going to notice there's definitions of language that is in the indicators, the research indicators. There's support for research concepts. We don't want there to be like a misconception that like, oh, research is the new inquiry, because research and inquiry are 2 different things. So there's some clarification along those lines. So if you'll take a moment to look through the research document, and again, we'll have a discussion about the purpose of the document and how it could impact your practice. Starting to see some comments in the chat. Thank you, Phyllis, for mentioning differentiation, and Mary also, the expectations from grade level to grade level and how that document can be used. One great way, again, is to figure out, where my students are, where they came from and where they need to be. And if I have students already there, how can I push them even more? Thank you, Tracy. Yes, particularly in associates, if you are doing research, let's align it. Academic honesty, very good. All right, does anybody want to unmute? Let us know what you're thinking.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if or how the standards are going to address our new AI capabilities.
So that's a great question. And it is something that we have had discussions about. We have already noticed, even prior to the 2023 standards, that AI is a thing, and it has already interrupted some testing procedures. Some teachers are worried about it. They want to know, what can we do? How do we teach students? And those are conversations we're having. And Mandy, if you'll write that down, that may be a support document that we need to create. What if we shift our viewpoint from like banning students from using it, but how can we use AI in a way that is honest and with integrity, and that's something that's going to be a thinking tool. I'm in my doctorate program, and I absolutely use ChatGPT as the thinking partner. If I'm out of ideas, I say, well, give me some ideas, and then I'll run with one of those ideas. And I'm not using it to plagiarize, but it's important to have thinking partners sometime. So I think that that's a super duper idea, and we can add that to the list of our committees for a support document. We'll bring that to the team and see. And Phyllis has a good point that, maybe we need to work with some of our technology people on that and how to help. But I do think it's important to look specifically through the lens of ELA. So thank you for bringing that question up. Mandy also said we're in conversation with other states on how to address the use of AI, how we can support educators with this new technology, and hopefully that'll be something we'll have for you all sooner rather than later. Anybody else want to share? Before we move. All right. Our next document is the rhetoric support document. And someone mentioned earlier about how it would be nice to provide some just content PD to teachers for grammar, because maybe they have not had that content if they weren't specifically, their degree's not in English. And I think rhetoric is similar to that because rhetoric has shifted from a high school introduction to a sixth grade introduction. And there are going to be teachers, middle level teachers, who have never done this before. And so we wrote the rhetoric document through that lens of what support could we add and give to teachers who are now expected to teach this and have never ever, like, I'm going to be honest, there was maybe a time that I didn't know how to pronounce the word rhetoric, right? So we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all teachers who are now being expected to teach this. So you're going to find definitions of language and the indicators and examples of rhetorical appeals. I will also say that there was so much information in this document that we developed support documents for the support document. So the one that you have in the chat is the base piece, the foundation. But if you go to the instructional resources page, there's actually 4 additional resources linked. So there's even more than what I just put in the chat. So I'm going to stop talking, give you a few minutes to look at it, and then we'll have a discussion. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and see if I can put somebody on the spot. Are there any sixth grade teachers in the room with us today?
My name is Jana Richardson. I'm a sixth grade teacher.
Okay, Jana, I was also a sixth grade English teacher, so you're my people. So tell me, what do you think about this document?
Thank you very much, because when I saw the rhetorical devices, I was like, oh goodness. But from my perspective in today's society, it's so crucial that the students learn these and understand these devices as soon as possible so that they can understand what's going on in the world with the amount of information that they are receiving just daily.
Yeah. Thank you, Jana. Thank you for being willing to be put on the spot. Do we have anybody else want to chime in just what you're thinking about this document and the support that it provides?
I'm Allison Blizzard from District 4 in Anderson. I really, really like this support document. I think this is going to be really helpful for us. And I appreciate the mindset of making sure that since I'm at the middle level, that we understand all of this, too. So I appreciate that from the State Department.
Yeah, thank you, Allison. And maybe put in the chat too, just a reminder that all the definitions that are in these support documents actually came out of the glossary. And we just pulled them out and put them in the appropriate support document so that you didn't have to flip back and forth from the support document to the glossary. So if you see definitions in support documents, they're exactly the same ones that you'll see in the glossary. So thank you.
Brenna?
Yes.
Though I don't currently teach ELA right now. I taught sixth grade ELA for half of my 30-something career. And one thing that I know is that even though people think that this might be too much for a kid that age, this is actually the perfect age to do it, because those kids are they're at a precipice in their life where they're at the edge of elementary, but the beginning of, moving toward adulthood, and they like this kind of thing. So don't let that stop you. Don't let it be fearful for you. Those kids will eat this up if you present it the right way.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, for that.
I agree with her 100%. Because, rhetorical devices and the use of ethos, logos, and pathos help students understand how people are persuading them, because all writing is persuasion. And in this world with social media and all of the non-information that we have out there, students will have the tools to break down the argument of the speaker or the writer and determine for themselves credibility in sixth grade, rather than waiting until 9th or 10th grade to examine the structure behind this writing. So it's really, for me, it's a piece of text structure that needed to be introduced sooner.
Excellent, thank you.
And I want to notice how the document starts with fifth grade, really with that essential vocabulary. But just in my observations of elementary classrooms, I've seen a lot of teachers confuse the words reason and evidence. And so even like in second and third grade, when they're reading a text and the teacher asks them to provide evidence, what she suggests to them would be reasoning. And sometimes when she says, can you find a reason in the text, I think she should be asking to find the evidence in the text. So I think even this document kind of starts above, but just kind of have an eye to the fact that sometimes these students are learning the terms incorrectly, and will have to unlearn them when they get to fifth grade, according to this document. So that's just an observation I've made about the confusion of those two terms.
That's a great observation, Floyd. And really it leads to a bigger conversation about the academic language that we use anyway. And someone mentioned this earlier on in the webinar about how the documents help with that consistent language from district to district, school to school, teacher to teacher. So I think that is something that we definitely need to be mindful of. Some relevant examples that just pop up are central idea versus main idea. Our standards use central idea. Point of view and perspective. Who even knows what those mean anymore, right? According to the old standards. The new standards have clarified that for us and provided some definitions. So it's a great idea to really familiarize yourself with the glossary, which is something we're going to look at in just a minute, because those definitions were written based on the intent of their use in the standard. So however the standard intended them to be used is how we wrote the definition. So it's a great resource for understanding exactly what you need to focus on when it comes to those indicators. So that's a great point. So let's look at the text complexity resources document now. And we have Mandy to thank for this one. She worked hard on this. You can expect answers to frequently asked questions about text complexity, examples of annotated complex text at varying levels. Mandy was out here writing books to make sure that we had something for you all to see an example of, because, you know, how often are you asked to select a text for students, and you pick one because you liked it or because you've always read it in 6th grade or whatever, but you're not quite sure, is this really appropriately complex text for these students? So I'm going to give you a moment to look at this document, and then we'll talk about what is its purpose and how it's going to impact your practice. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Good. Yes, Floyd. All right, let's have someone or someone's unmute. Let me know what you're thinking.
I was just going to say that this is one of the hardest things for me in a social studies class, because I have, depending on what class I'm in or what class of students I have in front of me, I might have students reading on a 2nd or 3rd grade level, and I am trying to do something on comparative religions or you know, comparing the Haitian Revolution to the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And I'm like, oh, and I need to find something written on a 2nd or 3rd grade level to help these students function independently. It's why I do a lot of reading aloud for those struggling readers. And then the whole time I'm doing that, I'm wondering, am I then not benefiting the students who are proficient and above level readers? And this is where I finally, my eyes opened to the AI that we talked about before, where I had a ELL student reading on a 1st grade level coming in, pushing into one of my classes, and I saw it on Facebook. And so I could go into ChatGPT and say, okay, write a paragraph on a 2nd grade level that talks about whatever, using these vocabulary words. But this is where we really need resources.
Amy, that is such an innovative use of AI. I don't know if I would have thought of that, and I appreciate that. Mandy, if you want to chime in for a second, I can't even remember, we haven't talked about this in a long time, but you had a tool that assisted with the complexity of text, yes?
Sure, yeah. So one tool that we used to kind of adjust when working with students, we'll adjust some of the release passages that we have. It's called Rewordify. It's a free online tool. You can copy and paste text into Rewordify, and it can lower the Lexile level of that text for whatever audience you're working with. We've done that with a lot of times when we try to give students examples of the text-dependent analysis passages. We'll rewordify them to give, students maybe with a lower reading comprehension level access. And so Rewordify is an excellent tool. And there was a really good comment in the chat about there's only a low level complexity text for 8th grade. So the passages or the examples that are given are in grade band examples. It was a very overwhelming task to try to provide a low, mid, and high level complexity text for each grade level. So instead, we kind of provided those in grade bands, especially because the quantitative aspect of text complexity can range so much within a grade band, but it overlaps a lot. So when we considered that, the committee that came together to support this work agreed just to have examples for each grade band. The high school grade band has the most examples, and then you poor K through 2 friends, you have the least examples. So.
Thank you, Mandy. I could not remember what it was called, but I knew you had that resource. So that is great conversation. Is it possible to get an example of the rubric that we use throughout the process? Mandy.
Yes, it is in the standards document. It follows the front matter discussion. I think it comes right after the foundations of our document. You'll see the text complexity rubric listed there. One suggestion that we've already gotten in feedback for the text complexity support document is that we should include the rubric with the resources. So that may be something that you see in the revisions when those come out in a few months, that will kind of make a comprehensive text complexity resource document. But very good question.
Yeah, thank you. And that, Mandy, that brings up to, I mentioned earlier that we withheld those resources from the standards document so that we could update. So as you guys are going through, please send us feedback and let us know. I think there's even a link on the website where you can click and give us feedback, or let us know, oh, you've misspelled something, or, we noticed a punctuation error or something. Please fill that out, because in about 3 to 6 months time, we'll sit down and do one big overhaul revamp of all the feedback that's been given to us, correcting anything that has been brought to our attention, and then we'll repost and republish those documents based on the feedback we're getting from the field. So please know that we are attentive to that, and we are excited to make those changes based on your needs. And that's a great question about Lexile levels. So Lexile levels are what the is used for choosing passages for the state testing. So if you're ever wondering, how do they pick which passage goes on a state test, they do it within Lexile level ranges. Okay, let's look at the glossary. This might have been the most challenging of the support documents. When I say there were some discussions about these words, I'm telling you, there were some discussions. I think we spent 30 minutes one day talking about the meaning of meaning and how it related exactly to the indicator. So this is a comprehensive document capturing instructional and assessment friendly definitions according to indicator intent. If it is in the glossary, it is in an indicator, okay? And the indicators are how our assessment is built. So when students go to that state assessment, they're going to see the language of the indicator, and you now have the definitions to the language of the indicator. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at that, and we'll talk about it, how you think it's going to impact your practice. Good, Amber. Yes. I also had debates over what what specific words means. Absolutely, Sandra. All right, does anyone want to unmute and share some of your thinking?
So I am an alternate certification early childhood elementary teacher. And so I do not come from a background of knowing all of these things. And all I've asked for is resources, where can I go? And so these are amazing for me because I would love to say I know it all, but I don't. And I'm like, where can I learn it? And here it is.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for the being vulnerable and telling us that, because that's important feedback for us, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're going to find them helpful. That's definitely a celebration. Will the glossary correlate to other subject areas? That's a good question. Teacher word walls, yes. Mandy, what do you think about that? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question, Amber. So the glossary was developed in conjunction with social studies for a good bit. And a lot of the terminology in regards to the verbs that are used was discussed with our math team, who is currently revising their standards, so that that language aligns as well. Now, obviously, some of the language in the glossary is like content specific, but it was informative for us, and it was important to us that we have conversations with math as they're revising their standards that determine means the same thing for us as it does for them in their indicators, especially for you elementary generalists or special ed teachers who teach it all and have to, code switch between the different contents. Second, it was important for us to talk to social studies about a lot of that information regarding like primary and secondary sources, or the chronological thinking skills, or the research skills. We wanted to tap into what social studies had already kind of troubleshooted and developed for their standards. So you will see some alignment with that. We're very proud of this glossary and the work that it took to get it where it is.
It was the bane of our existence for a little while, y'all. This glossary was, I'm not even gonna lie, but we're so excited for it. And Brittany, that's such a good point, that we send our most vulnerable readers to the most people in the building. They're going to RTI, speech, ESOL, and there's term confusion all over the place. And I think you're exactly right. And this glossary is going to help solve that problem. Very good. All right, the last one we're going to take a look at is the vocabulary support document. And I feel like I have to give a caveat with this one, because lots and lots of people ask for this support, and lots of people would very much like a list of Greek and Latin stems, roots, and what's expected at each grade level. Unfortunately, that falls within the realm of curriculum, and because we are a locally governed state, your district makes curriculum decisions, not the state. So we could not include an exhaustive list of Greek and Latin roots that are expected for each grade level, but we did provide partial list and some suggestions, some thinking, some ideas. So we hope that that is still going to be a very useful document for you as far as expectations goes. It provides insight into the vocabulary standards, definitions of terms used within the indicators, and then also some instructional supports when applicable. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at that, and then we'll talk about the purpose and how it will impact your practice. Tracy. Awesome, Sharinda. I'll have to give my 2 cents here about what an excellent place this is to think about your cross content expectations. When I was teaching, I loved STEMs and I loved coming up with very interesting ways to study them, but I always built my list based on science, social studies, and math standards. So as you're thinking through your list, consider reaching out to some of those content people and asking, what are your vocabulary words? How can we support you in our instruction? Anybody want to unmute and give us your thinking?
Brenna, I'm very excited to see the repetitive use of the word nuance in this list, because if we don't teach nuance, we can't get to mood and tone and how mood becomes tone. And I remember when I was teaching 8th grade a few years ago, I was trying to teach some at-risk students the term of nuance, and we connected it to a seance, because in a seance, you can't really see the difference. You feel the difference in the mood when the candles are on and the lights are out and all of that. So I really am happy to see that particular term being used and repeated, because it's one of those things that's a key to unlocking what kids can infer beyond the text, that implicit meaning that's so hard to get them to put their fingers on, especially if they're at-risk students or they struggle with reading. So I'm very excited to see that that's really being emphasized in multiple areas.
Thank you.
I also, as a high school teacher, I teach words just on their standalone kind of thing, but as far as in a contextual context, my biggest thing is how those words, the meaning of those words change sometimes in the context of it. So we'll take the same word that they learned on a standalone kind of way, and how the words of those same words will change based on the context that's used, but also connotation versus denotation. And I love that etymology is also used in there, because I make them also learn that.
Yes.
They hate it, but I love it.
I also like how with the descriptions that they were given, like the overview, I like how that is geared towards even a first-year teacher can understand, just in case they were wondering what it is they're really supposed to do, because of course things are a little bit different from when you're learning it in school and then when you're actually in the field. So this is I like how this is explaining it simple enough for a first-year teacher to even understand the different steps, as well as how everything is broken down for each tier. I like that as well.
Thank you. And Dr. Wagner had a great question in the chat about at the high school level, the department is split. Some people want to teach vocabulary and standalone, you know, your textbooks, and some want that contextual vocabulary instruction. And you know, how do we do it? And of course, our answer is clear as mud, right? This instruction of vocabulary has got to be both. You have to have some systematic and explicit instruction, but you also need to address it contextually. So like a lot of things in ELA, there has to be a balance. And that's what we're suggesting to yield the greatest impact for students. And that's certainly something that we can consider if we want to write that down, Mandy, of how else can we provide support for our high school teachers. Okay, any other comments on the vocabulary support document? Let's stop and jot. Of these support documents that we reviewed today, you have to pick one. If you can only keep one, what do you feel is going to have the greatest impact on instruction for the audience you serve? Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Amanda, Michelle. Isn't that funny that the first three are all different? Everybody would choose one different. And I love that because it shows that we're meeting the needs of a variety of people. Excellent. And our GT person will be so pleased to see that so many people that would be the one they would keep. Excellent. See a lot of glossary, crosswalk. Excellent. So now I have another pop-up teacher tip for you. Let's think through this. Has a friend or family member ever been stressed and you didn't know how to help? Just a little scenario. That's my life today. I told my teammates this morning, I said, I'm stressed after this webinar. I might have to take the rest of the day off. Just, I got a lot going on. So it happens sometimes and we don't know how to help people. And I think that includes our parents. Sometimes our students' parents want to help, but they don't know how. They don't know where to start. They don't know the questions to ask. Someone mentioned earlier in the chat that some of our parents don't have the skills that we're teaching their students currently. So how can we use resources like the grade level entering statements, the glossary, grammar expectations, all these support documents? How can we use them to help equip and empower parents? Unmute or drop something in the chat. Tell me what you're thinking.
I feel like we almost have to have like help your kid 101 classes at our schools. You know, and it might be as structured as, you know, if your child is struggling with ELA and you want to help them, we're going to have a session for parents only on the first Tuesday of every week or of every month, and see who shows up. I think one of the problems with simply making resources available to our parents is that a lot of our parents aren't as literate as we would hope they would be. And so we can't email a list of resources for them to click on and read. I don't think that's going to do it. I think we've got to do some more one-on-one teaching them.
Yeah, some parent workshops. And Amy, many moons ago, I taught elementary school, and right when the new math came out, you know, and parents were all up in an uproar. How am I going to help my kids long divide when I don't know how to do these boxes? And that's what I did. I held a parent night. Come in, let me teach you how to do this so you can help your kids. And I think that, you know, it's different for every district as to literally what you can provide, the resources that you have that allow you to have certain nights, or, you know, parent universities or academies or whatever. So every district's going to have to handle that differently. But I think our resources are a great place to start. And, you know, we will have family friendly standards that come out again. We're going to have a committee help us write those. And we are tossing around some ideas with, you know, a parent handbook. What could be included in that? You know, can we give parents at the beginning of the year the grade level entering statement, just to give them an idea of what's to come? It's lots of resources I saw some people put in the chat, if you had a literacy night, using some of these support documents as stations for parents, Saturday school for parents, there you go. School agendas, weekly newsletters, you know, just what if you put a pop-up parent tip in an email every week, you know? Any other thinking that anyone wants to share out? Yes.
Good morning again.
Good morning,
What I was thinking is, you know, we all love consumables and clarity, and it might be nice to give the information in the forms of those literacy nights, but giving actual concrete material that they can bite into. What does it look like when a student is approaching this, attaining mastery of this particular standard, where we can show where they would begin, what growth looks like, and then what that outcome that we would look for the student to have as they exit. And I teach high school, and all of these things will, from the very beginning with our K all the way through 12, that South Carolina Portrait of a Graduate, all of these things connect with the standards and the adjustments. And you guys have really done a great job in simplifying, because we had tons of indicators, that went with standards, and this has really simplified a lot of it. And it might just be great to show, because a parent can listen to all of our vocabulary and the things that we understand because we're knee deep in the trenches, but actually showing them this is what it looks like. Because like even with an AP, whenever you're looking through advanced placement samples of writing documents, they show you what something looks like that might have scored, a lower score compared to what the exemplar would be. So I think that that would be important to give them actual things that they can see, and they'll get it because they have the visual and the depth of knowledge that would come from getting that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love all these ideas in the chat that I hope you are gathering and writing down and can make work for your specific situation. I do have bad news that this conversation has been so good that we're running a little behind. So we're going to skip our 5-minute break and we're going to push through to the last part. But by all means, if you need to run, take care of something, please do. But we don't want to not have enough time to show you this resource that we've built. So we realize that the standards and looking at them and all the support documents is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming and can be overwhelming. So we worked on a reading guide, a study guide. If you've ever done a book study where you had your built-in discussion questions, and we felt that would be a really great tool to start with. So we have for you in the chat both a Google Slides version that you can type right into, and then also a PDF version that you can, if you have Adobe or something, you could type into, or you could print it out. And there, we hope that you'll use this in one of 3 ways, if not more. A self-study, that if you just want to tackle these standards on your own, this will help you through it. Maybe a group study, it's your team of teachers, it's your English department, maybe admin at the district level, or if you're in a position where you're an instructional coach, school level admin or district admin, and you need a time frame, like a framework for PD facilitation, this is a great place to start. So I'm gonna actually pull the PDF. Yes, your very own consumable workshop. We called it one bite at a time. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying of, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? The standards are our elephant right now. And so we've broken it up into 13 manageable steps. We have left you some notes for consideration. We were just talking about, how this has been really condensed. And actually, if you look, the 2015 document had 44 standards and 116 indicators. The 2023 standards have 24 standards and 51 indicators. So that's a huge difference. So we also wanted you to know that there are many strategies for reflective practices in this document. And as you complete the reading and reflection, consider how you can use them with your audience. They're all those teacher behaviors that you can use and use again. We've included our contact information. You are always welcome to reach out with questions, with feedback, with suggestions. We would love for you to do that. So in the PDF version and in the the Google Slides version, everything is linked for you. So you'll notice there's 13 steps. We call them bites. And you have the standards document linked for you there. And then we'll just look at bite 1 as an example. It's the revision process. So we want you to read page 4 of the standards document. If you open that up, it's just page 4 of the standards document. And we've also included a presentation about the revision process. The strategy that we're asking you to use is learn, love, lingering. And after you finished your bite 1 reading, you're going to answer what did you learn, what did you love, and what lingering questions do you have. Overall, we're doing a 4 R's. Your read, you're reflecting, you're going to reason, and then you realize. So why is the 7-year cyclical review process necessary? Why is it important for educators to understand the process? That's your kind of reasoning behind. We've got to understand the reason that we even did this review process. And then you realize, how will you use and or apply this information to your practices? Is there anyone you need to share it with? And it goes through following that model with different reflection questions throughout, all the way to bite 13, which is your actual grade level indicators. So I see lots of positive comments in the chat, and I hope that you will find this to be a excellent resource. So yes, Mandy, thank you for pointing that out, that this tool is only available through the webinar series. This was one way that we wanted to thank you for taking some of your summer to spend with us and really dig into the standards. And so this is our gift to you as a thank you for coming, and we hope that you will use it and reach out to us if you have questions. Any questions just right off that you can think of? I hope that that you'll enjoy that resource. I am a sucker for a study, and I thought, if I was a teacher, I would like to do that. Yes, Clayton, to answer that, this is recorded and we will be sending this out. Okay, last thing we're going to do today in our last 8 minutes together is a little clarity and closure. We do have a survey that we need you to complete. And then after the survey, we will ask you to complete a recertification form if you want your recertification. So I'm getting the survey. For some reason, I didn't have the link. Mandy, do you have quick access to the feedback survey link? I forgot to put it in here. So while Mandy's getting that, we want to just thank you for joining us today and for your participation and the conversation that was had, because I think that the real value in these webinars is that we are having conversation with people across our entire state, and that you are able to get ideas and thinking from people that you normally wouldn't have those conversations with. So Mandy's going to put the feedback survey in the chat. She's just done that. So if you could please take just 2 or 3 minutes and complete that survey for us, it gives us valuable feedback as we present this same session tomorrow and Friday in our other rounds of series. And then once you have done the feedback survey, we have your recertification form that I will put in the chat momentarily.
I saw a couple of questions pop into the chat I wanted to address super quickly. One question centered around the different versions of the standards document. There is no plan currently to have a grade level standards document for each different grade level. That information could be printed from the master standards document. But in order to avoid any errors with, copying and pasting or having a lot of different versions that teachers are kind of viewing different pieces, we wanted there to be as minimal different documents for the grade level standards as possible. So our plan currently is only to have the one comprehensive document, that's the 270 something page one, and then the additional document of the vertical articulations with indicator insights. But that's a really good question. Another question that I received in the chat was around instructional materials. We are currently in that process as well. Last week we met first round with our instructional materials panel. We received the materials, and we also sat through presentations through all of the bids. Super fun. As those materials are reviewed throughout the summer, a decision will be made by September on what materials will caravan through districts for adoption. And then in winter 2023 to spring 2024, those materials will caravan throughout the state for your districts to view and decide on what your adoptions will be.
Don't forget that this is a 3-part series. So you have part 2 in July and then part 3 in August. So we are looking forward to continuing to work with you all. Again, we've put the recertification survey as well as the feedback survey in the chat, but I also want to show you this. If you are interested on serving on an ELA standards committee, so you're really interested in MTSS, that's a support document we hope to have. Handwriting, that's another support document we would like to have. The parent friendly standards, that's one we want to have. If you're interested in serving on one of those committees, we'd love to have your name on our list of people that we can reach out to for that work. So there is a link there for you to let us know that you are interested. We want to have a representative from, you know, as many places as we can get so that all of our students and all of our districts are equally represented. Yes. Danny, yes. We will make sure that you get the note catcher